Hello, and welcome for the TeacherChamps round 2, round 1, game 2 recap. Mr. Fischer here is playing white. We have Mr. Cuneo playing black. This is a big game. We have e4, e5 to begin the game. We have knight to f3, knight to f6, d4, d5. We have Mr. Cuneo playing a copycat and causing chaos in the center. We have knight c3. Mr. Fischer develops the knight. We have bishop b4. Mr. Cuneo pins the knight to the king. We have bishop g5. Mr. Fischer attacks back and pins the knight to the queen. And then here we have castles, and then bishop b5. Mr. Cuneo now has a chance to take this pawn, and this knight will be hanging because it cannot move. And if the queen takes, then this pawn can take here, and the queen is hanging, and so is this knight. So there's a lot of different moving parts in this position. There's a lot of things going on. And we have Mr. Fischer playing h6, which is a good move, trying to kick out the bishop, trying to stop the pin. Mr. Cuneo playing h6, trying to kick out the bishop. We have d takes e5, attacking the knight. H takes g5, taking the bishop, and then Mr. Fischer takes the knight. Then here we have c6 by Mr. Cuneo, attacking the bishop. But Mr. Fischer finds a good move here. He takes the pawn and attacks the rook. This rook is now in danger. Mr. Cuneo should move it, but he moves the bishop. Now Mr. Fischer can take a decisive advantage and win the rook. But he castles instead. He protects his king. This is not the best move, but it is a very reasonable one. Then we have knight d7. Mr. Cuneo still doesn't notice that his rook is in danger, and he develops the knight. This could go very wrong if Mr. Fischer takes the rook, but he doesn't. He takes the pawn in hopes that he'll take this pawn and then save his bishop from danger. And now Mr. Cuneo notices, and he moves the rook away. The rook is now no longer in danger, but Mr. Fischer is just in time to save his bishop with the pawn. Now here we have Mr. Cuneo playing rook to e5, trying to counterattack. He thinks, yeah, you're going to take my pawn? I'm going to take your bishop. But the problem with this is that when he takes the pawn, he's attacking the rook. 5 is greater than 3, so this move does not work. Mr. Fischer takes the pawn. And then we have queen to e8, and now Mr. Cuneo gives up the second rook of the game. And this time, Mr. Fischer pounces and he takes. He takes the rook. Mr. Cuneo takes back. He trades the bishop for the knight. And then now, he has a hanging rook here. He can take the rook for free. But Mr. Fischer decides instead, hey, I'm going to play a3, and now both of your bishops are under attack. How are you going to defend them both? Well, Mr. Cuneo plays rook f5, not finding a very good answer, and both of the bishops are still left under attack. We have rook e1 by Mr. Fischer, trying to capture the open file. And then we have rook d5 by Mr. Cuneo, a creative move to save this bishop. Now, if the knight takes the rook, the bishop can take this rook. And this is exactly what happens. Knight takes, bishop takes. And then we have queen takes e1. Mr. Fischer had a chance here to play knight takes e1, and then the queen would have still been defending the knight, which means Mr. Cuneo couldn't have taken back. But he takes with the queen, and then the queen takes back. We have queen to e3 by Mr. Fischer, trying to double attack on this g5 pawn and maybe get in, try to attack the king somehow. We have g4 by Mr. Cuneo, making the knight move. And now Mr. Fischer plays a very smart move here. He plays knight h4, and we'll see why this move is very key to how this game ends. We have bishop c6 by Mr. Cuneo, and he's aiming for checkmate. If the queen gets here, this would be checkmate because the king can't take and the king can't move. Mr. Fischer should be worried. He plays c4 to provoke, and now is Mr. Cuneo going to take with checkmate? He takes the pawn, but wait, it's not checkmate. It's because Mr. Fischer's knight, it moved from there to here, but it was on a mission. It was defending the king. The backwards knight move saves the king. The king has nowhere to go. He is helpless. But the knight, he's a hero, and he saves his king. Mr. Fischer is now up with a decisive advantage. He's up 17 points of material. He's up a queen, rook, and 3 pawns. This is a huge advantage, but maybe Mr. Cuneo has a chance to complete a turnaround here and maybe get a draw. We have f5. But Mr. Fischer doesn't go down. He keeps on attacking. He's gonna attack the king now with this rook on the open file. All the pieces are going in. We have king takes the pawn. Then we have rook to d6 attacking the bishop. The king moves to f7, and Mr. Fischer, he isn't greedy. He isn't going to take the bishop. He instead plays queen e6 check, seeing that if the king moves along the 7th rank, he has a ladder mate. So king to g7, queen to e7, king down, and now after the rook goes down, Mr. Cuneo has to give up his bishop, and Mr. Fischer takes for checkmate. So let's summarize this game real quick. So we have a huge position here where Mr. Cuneo plays c6, a very risky move. And then the rook is hanging for 3 moves straight. This is absolute craziness. But then Mr. Cuneo saves his rook. And then we have taking here with Mr. Fischer saving his knight. And then we have another move by Mr. Cuneo trying to counterattack. But we have Mr. Fischer calmly taking the pawn and attacking the rook. Mr. Cuneo doesn't notice, and those pawns attacking the rooks, and Mr. Fischer capitalizes and wins the rook, and then it seems like it's smooth sailing for Mr. Fischer. He's up a rook and he converts calmly, and then he plays knight h4 here, luring Mr. Cuneo in. He is offering Mr. Cuneo the grand prize of checkmate, and then Mr. Cuneo falls for the bait, and Mr. Fischer is now in a totally dominant position, and he checkmates Mr. Cuneo. This was a brilliant game. This was a fascinating game. This was an exciting game. This was a game of juggernauts. Absolutely massive. Both played exceptionally well. But Mr. Fischer ultimately came out the winner. Thanks for listening, and I look forward for Game 3.